Alright, first time playing at Hamul Casino. Before jumping into the hands, I want to give a quick shout out to Doug McCusker, Mariano Poker, Johnny Moreno, and the Poker Beast. Apologies if I missed anyone, but I heard about this spot through those fellow content creators. The first notable spot comes in the only significant hand that I played at 1-3. I didn't have the camera turned on at the time, so I'm just using some general footage as a background. I raised the $10 with pocket threes, and I get 3 callers. We go to a flop of Queen Jack 3, so I flop bottom set, checks to me, I bet 25, and I pick up 2 callers. Turn comes the Jack of Diamonds, so I fill up, small blind checks, and I decide to check this time. The other player in late position bets 55. Folds back to me, and I'm playing 255 in my stack. In these 1-3 games, I don't think there's really ever a need to balance, so I look to target the hands that I think he has, which contain a Jack. I jam for 255. He makes a pretty quick call, and he shows Ace Jack offsuit. Just need to fade the river, and it comes the Queen of Diamonds. Dirty way to start the session. Next notable hand comes at 2-5. There's a button straddle. Not exactly a fan of this setup because I feel that it's already giving an advantage to the position that has the most advantage at the table. Nevertheless, it folds to me in the small blind, and I just call with ace-5 of spades. Big blind calls as well, and the button checks. We go 3 ways to a flop of 9-8-5, 2 spades and a diamond. Nice flop with bottom pair and the nut flush draw. I bet 15. Big blind calls, and the button gets out of the way. Turn comes a 4 of diamonds, putting up another flush draw. Can go either way. I choose a soft route and check. Big blind checks as well. River comes the 6 of clubs, so I don't get there. It does complete a one-liner. I try to get to showdown and just check. Big blind doesn't want to do that. He bets 65. This pot's going to him. Next hand, there's a hijack raise to 20. I call from the button with walking sticks. The big blind calls as well. 3 ways to a flop of Queen 9-8, all spades. Action checks through. We go to a turn of a Jack of spades. So now any spade makes a flush, and any 10 makes a straight. Big blind and hijack check, and I should have the best hand, so I make the attempt to go for some thin value against 2 pair type holdings, and potentially hands that contain a 10. I bet 20, and don't get any action as both players fold. Next quick spot, there's a middle position raise to 10. I pick up the speed limit on the button. The middle position raise didn't look too strong, so I look to play this one a bit faster. I 3-bet it to 30, and only the middle position calls. We go heads up to a flop of 7-4-3 rainbow. Checks to me, and although I don't flop a set, this is one of the better boards I can ask for. I fire, and he lets it go. This next hand comes against an opponent that I've been holding over during the session, and it does factor a bit into how I play this hand. Under the gun raises to 25. I'm next to ag with pocket aces and just flat in an effort to trap, and I can play accordingly if there's a squeeze. That doesn't happen, but the big blind calls as well. We go 3 ways to a flop of 8-5-5, 2 diamonds and a heart. Good flop overall. Checks to the initial raiser in under the gun. He fires 90. The player most likely to have a 5 are the big blind and me. I don't have one, but I like raising here for a multitude of reasons. 1, I get definitive info about big blind's hand. 2, I can get value from under the gun. And 3, it can also look bluffy. I raise to 250. Big blind folds, and under the gun calls. We go to a turn of a 3 of spades. Under the gun checks with around 500 back. Kind of an awkward stack size to go bet on turn and river, but I also don't really like a check either, given the presence of a flush draw. That said, I jam for his 500 effective. The problem with this spot is that it looks like I have a 5, but I'm also hoping that it could look like a flush draw. And as mentioned, this player has been running bad against me, so I'm hoping that he might get just kind of stubborn with his pocket pair holdings and get it in. And after some pretty long deliberation, he begrudgingly makes the laydown. Good fold by him. Next hand, I raise a 20 from the hijack with pocket 4s. Cut off to my direct left, 3 bets to 85. Kind of a big 3-bet, and when it folds to me, he's got another 700, so still some chips to maneuver. I make the call. We go to a flop of ace-7-4, so I flop bottom set. I check, he checks back. The turn comes a 6 of hearts, making the board a little bit more wet. I fire $100, looking to target hands, such as an ace that may have played some pot control on the flop, some flush draws, as well as pocket pairs, 10s through kings. He makes the call, and we go to a river of an ace of spades. So I fill up. It also makes it less likely that either of us has an ace. Can debate sizing between a more middling size or a more polarized size. If I had, say, pocket 5s, pocket 8s, or bricked hearts, I'd probably choose a more polarized sizing to get him off hands such as 10s plus. I make it 350. He goes in the tank for a very long while, and it looks like he wants to call, and he ends up thinking better of it and folding. Didn't catch the guy's name, but he did mention that he watches the videos. Good fold. There's a straddle in this next one. First to act raises to 30. Middle position and small blind call. I come along from the big blind as well with Jack 10 off, and the straddler folds. We go to a flop of Jack 7-5 rainbow. Small blind checks. I decided to go against flow and bet 40. The initial pre-flop raiser calls from under the gun 1. Middle position folds, and small blind jams for 330. It's pretty close, and this is the same player that I've been holding over, which makes me want to call. I wish I had 1 pip higher with Queen Jack, just so that I'm beating a few more jacks that he can have. After some deliberation though, I decided to fold. Under the gun 1 does call, and they go to a run out, which comes a 6 of diamonds and a 9 of clubs. Small blind tables, the winning hand with Jack 10 off. Get this one wrong and miss out on a chop. Button straddle is on in this next one. First act calls, and it folds to me in the small blind with a good looking hand, 7-9 of clubs. A good poker buddy of mine used to run pretty good with this hand back in the day when we played home games. I try to replicate that success and raise to 40. Big blind and under the gun fold, the button straddler calls. Heads up to a flop of King 5 forward. Bad flop for the hand, but good enough flop for the range, so I c-bet it and get an insta-fold. Shortly after, I find an adventurous spot. There's a limb from under the gun 1. Cutoff makes a pretty large raise to 35. I've got 35 of clubs on the button and decide to call. Big blind and under the gun 1 call as well. We go 4 ways to a flop of King 8-6 rainbow, so don't flop anything except for some very hopeful backdoors. The 3 players check to me, and I check as well. Turn comes a 4 of hearts, so it does bring me a little bit of equity as I pick up a straight draw. Big blind checks, and under the gun 1, the player that limp called pre, bets 75. The button folds, and given the board texture, she can definitely have a set, but it's hard to make a set, and I feel like she could be stabbing with a hand like 7-8, 6-7, pocket 9, something along those lines. With my hand, I choose to use it for its blocker value and raise to 225. Big blind folds, and under the gun 1 goes in the tank and lets it go. Take it down with the 5 high. Got another quick hitter in this next one. There's a button straddle and a couple of callers. I pick up King Queen suited from the hijack and raise to 50. Only under the gun calls, and we go heads up to a flop of 5-4-3, 2 clubs and a diamond. Not a good flop, but when it checks to me, I'm hoping my opponent missed and that a bet will get through. I make it 50. He ends up min raising to 100. That puts an end to this one. Next hand, under the gun raises to 20, folds to me on the button with pocket 10s. Giving under the gun credit for a tight range, I just call, and the big blind comes in as well. 3 ways to a flop of 9-8-6 rainbow. Nice flop with the overpair and a gutter. When both players check to me, I bet 35. Big blind calls, under the gun folds. Turn comes the ace of clubs, and big blind decides to bet into me now for 40. The ace shouldn't change too much unless it gives him 2 pair, and I feel like he's got a hand with a 7 that is trying to name his own price. I just make the call. River comes the queen of spades, so putting another overcard to my 10s, but similar to the ace, it shouldn't change too much. He keeps betting though, $70. After thinking it through, I hope to pick off a bluff. I call, and he tables ace 10 offsuit, so no bluff this time, unfortunately. This next one is one of the more interesting spots of the session. Cut off post, and I make a light open to 25 from the hijack with ace deuce offsuit. Cut off calls, and the blinds call. We go 4 ways to a flop of ace deuce 3 rainbow. Flop top and bottom, and when the blinds check to me, I decide to play this one tricky and check as well. Cut off also checks. We go to a turn of a 6 of hearts, so it shouldn't change too much unless someone has ace 6 or pocket 6s. Small blind checks, and big blind fires this time, $75. Good spot to put in more money, so I raise it to 175. Cut off and small blind fold, and big blind pretty quickly jams for his 5-10. So my read on this situation is that he could be perceiving weakness in my play and is just going with his hand. But ruling that out, I don't beat too much of his value. In theory, he could be calling light pre since he's closing the action from the big blind, but it would really just be 6-3 suited and maybe 6 deuce suited. And he's been playing pretty tight, and it just feels like he's got ace 6 or better. I could be wrong, of course, but getting 3-bet on a rainbow board, I ultimately decide to let it go. Feel free to drop a comment down below on what you would do. Do you think he's got ace 6 or better? Maybe a hand like 4-5? Given that I underwrote my hand on the flop, maybe this is a mandatory call? What do you think? Next hand, there's an early position raise to 20. I call from the button with queen 10 offsuit, and the big blind calls as well. We go 3 ways to a flop of 9-9-8, all red with a diamond draw. Big blind leads for 15, early position calls, and I try to capitalize on what I perceive as weakness and raise to 60. Well, it doesn't look like too much weakness as both big blind and under the gun call. The turn comes a 5 of diamonds, so I could try to rep the flush should the players check to me. Big blind does check, and under the gun though bets 200. In trying to recap his action, he raised pre and then just called a bet and a raise on the flop, and now he's leading the turn on this board texture. Pretty strange, but with my hand and that price, pretty hard to continue. Big blind folds as well. Straddle is on once again, this time 6-handed. I raise a 30 from the cutoff with ace-10 offsuit. The blinds on the straddle are call. We go to a flop of 8-4 deuce, all hearts. Not a good flop. When he checks to me, I check back. The turn comes the 4 of clubs, checks to me once more, and it doesn't seem like anyone is too interested in this hand. I look to try to take it down with some aggression. I bet 60, and everyone folds, so positional advantage works out this time. Last notable hand, I open to 20 from early position with queen 9 of diamonds. There's a caller, and then the button puts in a small 3-bet to 65. Small blind cold calls, and I got a decent hand to take a flop, so I put in the chips. Middle position calls as well. We go multi-way to a flop of ace jack jack with 2 diamonds and a heart. Pick up the second nut flush draw, but need to tread carefully on a paired board, particularly in a multi-way spot. 3 of us check it to the button 3-better, who knuckles back. We go to a turn of a king of clubs. Small blind leads this time, 175, and although I've got the second nut flush draw, just doesn't feel like an ideal spot to continue. I let it go, and the other players fold as well. Small blind tables, ace jack offsuit for the flop full house. Get away cheap here. Alright, I just wrapped up a session. Don't really know what to say. I'm exhausted. I feel like a complete degenerate. I started poker today at Sequan Casino, fired 2 bullets in the MSPT main. That kicked off at 3 in the afternoon. Wasn't able to have any success, and the wait list was way too long to play cash games there. So I took a quick dinner, lunch break around 9 after I busted. Came over here to Hamul Casino, played a 1-3, and ran into that pocket 3's cooler to start. Then moved over to the 2-5. Things were rolling in the beginning, and in the end, I actually ran ace-king into aces, which I didn't capture on the vlog, and lost a whole bunch of money there. Bought some extra, but long story short, got in the game for $1,525 and cashed out $1,885. So whatever the math is on that, 300 and some odd dollars minus the 175 that I lost in the 1-3. So still book a net win overall. So pretty happy with that. It's currently 4 in the morning, so aside from the 1-hour food break, I've been playing for about 12 hours, and I'm gonna wake up and do it all over again today. So that's gonna wrap it up for this one. I would really appreciate a sub, a like, comment, whatever. So that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Hope to do a bit better tomorrow in the tournament. If not, back to the cash games.